Well, the symposium is based on the scientific model of peer review to a certain extent, and talking how scientists get together and talk about a particular breed or a branch of science. For example, chemistry. Chemists get together and talk about new discoveries. I've taken that model and moved it into discussion around science policy, and for the same reasons, to share best practices internationally about how policy decisions in countries should be based on sound science. So we've created this symposium as a place for sharing policy best practices amongst policy and science functionaries. We've seen less emphasis placed on the science done for public good by the departments and agencies. So we initiated the symposium as a way to bring focus to that, to talk about the importance of what public scientists do, people who work for not-for-profit, not for education or long-term development, but for public good, for things like clean water, clean air, regulations, safe transportation.
Industry science, while very, very important, industry R&D is ultimately self-serving. It's designed to support the interests of the particular industry, which may or may not have broader society's best interests at mind. The cornerstone of all of this is a very strong, vibrant public science community.
So it's about learning, it's about growing, and it's about discovering how to improve and how to make things better. So I think we've already done that in 2007, and in 2010 we're going to do more of that, about the dialogue, learning from other countries, how they create good policies.
It's about improving the flow of evidence through policy in order to make better policy decisions.
Souvent, on est dans des petits silos. Comme moi, j'étais en astronomie sur ma montagne à Victoria. On ne sait pas ce que la personne fait à Saint-Jean-Terre-Neuve dans son labo, etc. Et puis, les petits problèmes, les petits trucs qui nous chicotent au niveau structure de travail, etc., ils sont communs, même si les domaines de recherche sont différents.
And it means that every country is dealing with the same science. They're dealing with the same conclusions, and it makes it possible to have a multilateral international dialogue, because you don't have to doubt each other's science. You agree on the science, and then you can have the policy discussion with a proper basis in the background.
As an advanced society, we need various systems to keep our way of life, and we need the scientific information to be able to operate these systems safely.
And so we have an obligation as an educational system, as a nonprofit sector, as the government, to really have an educated citizenry so that they can participate in these decisions. Because if we don't have good science-based decisions, we probably don't have good decisions.
Le travail de la Collectivité canadienne des sciences et de la technologie contribue grandement à la qualité de vie des Canadiens et des Canadiennes, nous le savons tous. Et le gouvernement fédéral est un acteur de premier plan dans cette collectivité.
On the days when I feel, wow, I'm really, really proud to be a public servant, particularly in the science domain, are the days when I can see that people have acquired new information that they will be able to put to use.
Je pense que des symposiums comme celui d'aujourd'hui, qu'est-ce qui est intéressant, c'est que ça nous donne des arguments, ça met des mots, ça nous donne des explications sur ce pourquoi on travaille. Parce qu'on le sait qu'on fait une bonne job et qu'on fait des bonnes choses, mais souvent c'est bon d'avoir David Suzuki, Preston Manning qui s'accordent ensemble pour dire que c'est bon de faire de la science, puis c'est bon de communiquer cette science-là, puis il faut qu'on le fasse. Donc, ça nous donne le petit choc électrique que ça prend pour continuer.
Increasingly, the issues facing the political people and government people, environment, global warming, health, pandemics, aging, the knowledge economy, productivity, competitiveness through innovation based on science. There's an increasing number of issues that are science-based in one way or another. At least you need science to try to figure them out, and you need science to provide some of the answers. So I think particularly science is becoming more and more relevant to public policy making. There's very few scientists in the Parliament of Canada or in the political staffs at the upper levels. So there's not there's not enough receptors to science, particularly at the political level, and I think that's a problem.
That what I feel that scientists do for us is to provide us with a base of understanding of the real world. That is, the real world is dominated by physics, chemistry, and biology. No one should try to build a perpetual motion machine. We know first and second law of thermodynamics. Nobody should think that we should design a space program based on going faster than the speed of light. And no one's going to invent an anti-gravity machine. I mean, these are fundamental facts of physics that we live with, and we should understand that. Chemistry has all kinds of rules about the rates of chemical reaction, diffusion, and breakdown of molecules, and so on, and we've got to live with that. And in the same way, with biology, we've got things like the fact that as biological creatures, we have an absolute need for clean air, clean water, clean soil, clean energy, biodiversity. Without those things, we sicken and we die. I mean, that's what science informs us.
I cannot imagine any public policy more delinquent, forgiving me for being that bold in expression. I have nothing but regard for what all of you collectively do. You look after the food security of this country. You look after the natural resources of this country. You check the medicines of this country. You deal with the nanotechnology which is emerging. You live your lives dealing with the natural science, and many of you with the social sciences and humanities, which explore the sometimes lunatic human behavior. And I salute you for that, and I thank you for that, and I hope from time to time you take pride in the fact that even when you're under the gun and you're excoriated by the Philistines who inhabit the political offices of life, that when all is said and done, your contribution collectively lies at the heart of the human condition.
You know, the importance is that we have these multiple views, this transparency and openness, so that citizens can say, oh, that's where that decision came from, that's how it worked. I think that's the most important thing that we'll be working on.
I think it's not only the value of the work that we do, but what would be the consequences if we didn't do that work? Who would be doing that work?
Science doesn't have national boundaries. The questions that we face, I think in the UK, are very similar to those that are faced in Canada and indeed elsewhere throughout the developing world. That's why it's so important that this conference focuses on those issues and the importance of reaching solutions.
Je suis particulièrement fier du travail de l'Institut des professionnels de la fonction publique, de prendre une position de leadership en matière de recherche, de science, d'innovation et de bien collectif.
Most policy conferences would be bringing policymakers together, but not scientists. This is a magnificent opportunity to have a mix of the two.
This conference raises the profile of PIPS members and their role in the scientific community in Canada. As we heard today from the deputy ministers, they appreciate our role, that we're probably the only advocate for public science in Canada right now.
Fundamentally, I think the Canadian public need to know that federal government science is funded by them for them. It is not funded by them for the politicians' purposes. And I think, frankly, many of our political elite need to recognize that they are elected into Parliament, wherever that Parliament may be, to make policy based on science, not to control science, not to silence science, but based on sound science.
We don't know when evidence is going to be relevant to policy, but when it is going to be relevant to policy, we really need to have it there.
You have to have a strong public science element done within the federal government to ensure the safety of the citizens.